What leads Chinese families to frequently manage restaurants in the US that serve American Chinese cuisine, despite its differences from traditional Chinese dishes? You're basically asking, why do Chinese restaurants in America serve food that Americans are more likely to buy? Because Americans are more likely to buy that kind of foods, plus in the past it was availability of ingredients. There's a documentary called The Search for General Tso that covers the history of American-style Chinese food, and discusses some of the ins and outs of the business that may be interesting for you. During my university days, my Chinese housemate introduced me to a popular Chinese restaurant on our street, frequented by actual Chinese students. When accompanied by our Chinese housemate, we were given an impressive Chinese menu. Without him, we were handed the English menu, featuring the familiar, anglicized versions of Chinese dishes. Although we could request the Chinese menu, the assumption was that non-Chinese patrons preferred the Americanized options. You have to pay the bill somehow. Most immigrant families, at least back in the day, came with no degrees or degrees that didn't transfer to work in the US. When you can't speak the language, you find jobs that don't require English. You work as a cook. Then when you save enough money, you open your own place. If your customers are mainly white non-Asian, you cater your food to their tastes. My parents owned a Chinese-American restaurant for 30+ years, put me through college and some of grad school, because giving people food they're more likely to buy leads to your business surviving, whereas giving people food they're not likely to buy leads to your business going out of business. I recommend this documentary on the subject. https://seinfeld.fandom.com/wiki/dream_cafe https://seinfeld.fandom.com/wiki/dream_cafe. Money. One significant factor is economic opportunity. Many Chinese immigrants find the restaurant industry accessible, offering a chance to build a business with relatively low barriers to entry. Additionally, American Chinese cuisine has evolved to cater to local tastes, creating a niche market that appeals to a broad audience. Cultural adaptation and entrepreneurial spirit play key roles in driving Chinese families to manage these restaurants, allowing them to thrive and contribute to their communities. There's a pretty cool documentary called Finding General Tso that goes into the history of Americanized Chinese food and how, even in the smallest of towns, the business thrives. The proprietors quickly adapt to the tastes of the locals. There was one place in the South that was using gator meat. It's weird that people aren't including this, but simply cost. There are 2-3 large distributors of American Chinese food supplies. This includes food and decor, naming rights, signage, everything you can think of. To develop your own menu with specific ingredients would be costly, so most of the time these owners reach out to these distributors. The distributors ask them to pick a name, decor, and menu that meets their in-stock options. Then boom, they're on contract for cheap food, but it's the same food as all the others. The dishes are still of Chinese heritage. They didn't just spring up out of the ether. Actual Chinese immigrants worked hard to come up with one of the early fusion cuisines in US history. Those immigrants had been adjusting the food for their own needs and taste for over 100 years before American Chinese became mainstream with white people in the 50s. Sweet and sour pork and chop suey are much older than that for the most obvious examples. They adapt to anywhere they are because locals are more used to certain tastes. I travel a lot for work, and it's funny going to Chinese restaurants in different countries to see sometimes very different dishes or similar ones with different taste. It also happens with other cuisines though, not only Chinese. We'll do a full write-up later, but part of the exemptions for the Chinese Exclusion Act was for business, namely restaurant owners. https://www.npr.org/sections/02/4611347113401/low-mind-loopole-how-u-s-dash-immigration-law-fuel-a-chinese restaurants cater to whatever region they are in by putting spins on their dishes. In every country, and I have yet to be to a country that doesn't have Chinese restaurants. For instance, Chinese restaurants in England frequently serve chips, fries, and advertise it as Chinese and chips takeout. P.S. McDonald's does this too. Please watch a documentary called The Search for General Tso. It explains the whole thing. Income and business opportunity? Is this really a complicated question? Watch the documentary, The Search for General Tso. Basically, racism forced Chinese immigrants into either laundry or restaurants. They then catered to their audience. American Chinese was invented by immigrants that had to adapt to new ingredients, and I'm pretty sure for a while there, the only businesses these immigrants were allowed to own were restaurants and laundromat. Look into the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. Although I'm not American, the same phenomenon is observed in the UK. Because Americans do not go to Chinese restaurants, is there even a generic Chinese cuisine? The one in Shanghai is different from Beijing, and from other areas, they would not even like them very much. They go to American Chinese restaurants, which have a cuisine they like.